Stories is a chronological account of experiences that I had back in the day developing games for Tandy and Activision for the color computer. And I've told a lot of these stories at previous conventions, but I do include a fair bit of new material toward the end. That's a lie. This is 99% the same as the same talk I gave last year, but that's okay. I'll be mentioning a lot of interesting things you might want to find later. This slide and the last slide lists where to look. Now I have this little cute thing that I do that isn't totally necessary, but it's kind of fun. To avoid swearing, at one point I will need to quote somebody used a bad word, and for the purposes of this talk, that word, which normally means an unpleasant person that begins with an A, that word will be aardvark. So I'll be talking a lot about the game developers Dale Lear and Steve Bjork, and sadly neither one of them are still with us, but they provided us with many fantastic games, far more than myself. I only consider myself a minor star in the CoCo constellation, but I'm really proud to have been a part of it all, and it's just been great fun. My poor wife may have hoped that she was marrying this guy, but when she got dragged along for the ride, she soon found out that she'd married this guy. My first exposure to computers was a PDP-8i at the local community college, and my first ever computer job was managing this beast. I learned BASIC on it and also, of course, assembler. That came in super handy later. At my first computer job just out of college in 1982, I met this guy, my coworker Dale Lear, and we quickly became friends. When home computers became a thing, I dreamed of getting a computer of my very own. And now at the time, I had my eye on what I have before described as an Atari ST. But my new friend Michael, who is an Atari guy who knows Ataris inside and out, says, no, those do not fit the timeline. It was probably an Atari 400, and that's probably what it was. Anyway, Dale and several others at work, including another friend, Jim Issel, and Dale's brother Paul, and a guy named Bob Newcomb, had bought a Tandy color computer. And they all ganged up on me. They said, you're not buying that thing. Here's what you're buying. So they showed me what this machine could do and talked me into it, and yeah, I want one of those. And we had a sizable federal tax refund coming up. And I told my wife, and she said, no, we need to get a kerosene heater. This old, drafty, cold farmhouse that we're living in, I'm not liking this. I want a heater. But I want to buy a color computer, I told her. No, she said, we're getting a kerosene heater, and that's final. So when I bought the color computer, she had some kind of feelings about that. Before long, she was saying, you spend too much time on that damn computer. We did get the kerosene heater soon after that with a state tax refund check, and that's why I'm alive today. I carpooled to work each day with Dale and Jim and several other coworkers who all owned color computers in Dale's old rattle-trap antique milk van, and on the way we discussed concept for games that we hoped to make, shouting over the roar of the engine. Dale's idea was for a game he called Superfly versus the Amazing Chomping Things. You would be directing the path of a little fly around your screen with your joystick, being chased by things like a pair of chomping false teeth and various other objects. Well, the false teeth didn't happen, but he did finish the game, and he sent it off to Tandy on a Quasar Commander cart that he'd repurposed. He'd cracked it open to install his own EEPROM to try to really impress them. It worked. This, of course, was the game that became Double Back. My ideas became Temple of Rom. It was inspired by the Atari 2600 adventure game. Remember that? Another big influence was the fantasy novels of Catherine Kurtz. Thus, teleportation in the game happens via transfer portals, which is a term from her books. I even had a user's manual with an elaborate backstory for the game. A tale of an intrepid adventurer in a fantasy setting sent to reclaim the temple for its original inhabitants who had been driven out by an occupying evil empire. But I wanted to do some things differently than the Atari adventure game. I wanted smooth scrolling in a large maze. I developed Temple of Rom on my early Mercedes silver color computer with chiclet keys, cassette player, a Mercedes silver RCA color TV, and an Edit-A-Sem cart. No floppy disk drive. Too expensive. The source was on 3 20-minute cassette tapes, and needless to say, I kept meticulous backups on numerous cassettes. Some of those early color computer models had a glitch in the power supply that would cause intermittent crashes. I would be working on the game, and sometimes the video would fade in and out, warning me a crash was imminent. So I'd whip off the cover. You don't have screws in your covers, do you? I'd spray Freon into the power supply, and that would stabilize things. One day, that happened while I was saving the tape, and I went to spray Freon into the computer, and nothing happened. The can was empty. So I leaned over and started blowing frantically into the power supply with my breath, hyperventilating until I almost passed out. Finally, I heard the motor relay click off for the final time, and I was saved. So I sent Tandy a floppy with the game on it, and after a few weeks, Mark Siegel called me back. "It's a beautiful game," he said. Now, this is totally cliche, but I just sort of blue screened for a moment. I said, "I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. What did you say?" "It's a beautiful game." Oh. So Tandy bought both Doubleback and Temple of Rom, and that put us on the map. Mark did mention, "I hate the game, though." I told him he could change it to whatever he wanted, but somehow that never came up again. So Temple of Rom it was. Rom was, of course, a subtle reference to read-only memory, though I was careful not to make it too obvious. I spelled it Rom with a capital R and lowercase om in all my correspondence with them. But some of their replies listed it as Rom in all caps, so I think they were probably on to me. I lurked around in Radio Shack stores for months looking for my first copy in the wild. When I finally got one, I got a surprise. Unbeknownst to me, they had thrown out my user's manual and put in their own with a space exploration theme. "You are an archaeologist for the Galactic Council of Free Worlds, sent to discover of the mysteries of the Temple of Rom, located on the desert planet Rolok." Rolok? Who the what now? Oh, color spelled backwards. Okay, I get it. At least they kept the transfer portal terminology. That's about the only thing that survived the change to Temple of Rom in space. Temple of Rom sold quite well, and my first royalty check was in the tens of thousands. My wife's eyes got really big when she saw that. "Why don't you go fool around some more on that damn computer?" she said. I put in an Easter egg in Temple of Rom. If you hold down the joystick button long enough, you can walk through walls. Well, the bat's going to eat you before that happens. So what you do is you position yourself right outside of a room, and then you hold down the fire button, and then you duck in, the monster sees you, you duck out, the monster says, "Oh, he's gone." And then a little bit later, you duck in, and the monster sees you, and then you duck out. And that way, if you've seen danger, the game is programmed to not throw the bat at you for a while. So that way you can hold off the bat, and then all of a sudden you can walk through walls. Of course, it doesn't help you at all. It's just kind of like a cool little thing for you to know. I then developed a second game. I was hoping for lightning to strike twice. I developed a game called Bomb Threat, and I sent it in. But Tandy didn't want that one, although my kids loved it. More on that later. I also started on a game I called OmniStar. That was a game where you hacked into a computer network, but I never finished it. I don't know why.
Rick,
Dale?
can I ask a quick one?
Ah,
What were your total sales at, like, on that graph is about maybe 20,000 units? Like,
yeah, let's take a look at that. It was, it looks like September, they started selling like crazy because of Christmas. So that first peak is around 4,000 units, and the second peak is 6,000 units, and I got $1.50 for every unit sold, which is pretty good actually. So Dale and Jim and I got online and joined the Delphi CoCo Special Interest Group sponsored by Rainbow Magazine. This is a screenshot from there's an online online archive of Delphi messages I put on the web. And early on, Dale called up Rainbow and said, "Hey, do you want us to write articles for you?" And they said, "Nah, we're good." "I have a prototype CoCo 3. And they said, "Yes, please." I wrote a Color Computer 3 terminal program that was originally named Ricky Term, similar to the name of another popular terminal program, Mikey Term. And Delphi later asked me to add some features to that and bought it, and they christened it Delphi Term. So we all started writing articles for them. Dale would usually write the programs, and I'd clean them up a bit and write the articles. And Jim Issel wrote game reviews. These are all people that work with me in the same place. And there was a lot of friendly competition between the Delphi folks and the CompuServe users, the online, SIG on the CompuServe. So people had been begging me to do a UUCP implementation so that CoCo 3 users could connect to the internet, exchange email, and post to Usenet news. But there was already a team among the CompuServe folk that were working on that. So I didn't see the need until they announced that they were almost done and they'd be releasing it on CompuServe only. And at first I was a little mad. Then I said, well, no, that's fair. They do the work, they get to decide where it gets uploaded. But I wanted it to be on Delphi too. So I started coding my own implementation. I was the Usenet manager at work, so it was convenient to test by connecting to my own node. And it took me about a month. And pretty soon the other team posted on the CoCo mailing list, "If you can read this, you are seeing the first email posted to the list from a CoCo 3. And I replied, well, actually, I posted an email from my CoCo 3 last week. And you might imagine that that caused a bit of consternation among the CompuServe guys, but imaginings are all that you would have. They were nothing but gracious to me. I give them props for that. That UUCP implementation was later expanded by Bob Bilson and is now known as UUCP-BB for Bob Bilson. This slide here is the historic entry of my UUCP node C Central, which was a CoCo 3 in my den, into the UUCP maps. Then Activision came calling, wanting Shanghai. I got to visit Activision's headquarters, meet my project manager, Sherry, who really was wonderful. She sent flowers on the birth of my daughter. I demonstrated a CoCo 3 for her, running the famous Sockmaster bouncing ball demo. Somebody that was passing by saw that in action and said in a rather bored voice, "Oh, right, the Amiga bouncing ball." "Look again," Sherry told him. "It's a Tandy Color Computer 3. And he did a double take. I didn't know we were doing things for the Color Computer. We are now. And so the Color Computer 3 port of Shanghai was born. And due to memory constraints, I could only fit a small fraction of the Victory Dragon screen despite my best efforts. And then disaster struck. This brings us to The Last Ninja. Various people writing books have called me up over the years, invariably eager to get me to spill the tea on this one infamous project. As the saying goes, success has many fathers, failure is an orphan, but everybody loves a good train wreck. This project was originally offered to Dale Lear, who turned it down. Dale was a pretty smart guy. That should have been a big clue for me. By the way, Steve Bjork later said, "Oh, they offered it to me too, and I turned it down." Okay. Here's the schedule for the game that Activision sent me. And if you look it over, you'll see they expected coding to take 4 months. Note the $1,000 for contract execution up at the top. Just for signing the contract, I get $1,000 up front. That will turn out to be important in a little bit. This game was to be done on OS 9. OS 9 is good for many things, but in my opinion, this game was not one of them. For one thing, there was a polyphonic soundtrack during gameplay. If you Google gameplay videos for the Amiga version, it sounds completely awesome. My best attempts at music in the one demo I produced were miserably pathetic. So if you feel like you're not going to make the deadline, please let us know, Sherry told me. And I reached a point where I knew I had to admit defeat. And so I returned to Activision headquarters, where they led me to a room where I met up with this guy, Steve Bjork. Oh, wait, wrong slide. This guy, Steve Bjork. Opinions vary on Steve. I will say he was an interesting guy, but I did like him. He looked over the source code listing that I brought him and immediately focused on the fact that it was structured as assembler routines called by a main line written in C. "Oh, that's your problem right there," he said. "That will not do at all." He felt that that was too inefficient. Well, he's not wrong. That was inefficient, but in my opinion, not to the degree that he thought. But no matter, I didn't care. I was rid of the project and about to walk out of that room a happy, free man. "This is going to be easy," he said. Sherry asked me if it was okay if they gave him my early completion bonus. Huh? Well, let's see. Early completion. My work was neither early nor complete, so I felt that I had no right whatsoever to say boo about it. I said, "Sure, no problem here." Steve was elated. "We're going to make a mint on this project." Steve did not make a mint on that project. He failed just like I did. He later complained that there were aspects to the game nobody told him about, like one screen where a freaking dragon rose up to do battle with you from a river that you were crossing. He was kind of peeved about that. I can't say that I blame him. He showed people a demo of how far he got at a convention once. He did get further than I did. There were animated enemies able to do combat. They just stood motionless for my demo. Much later, I was at a restaurant after a convention where he was a speaker and he was seated opposite me. And somebody was praising him for something or other, and he felt the need to reply by saying, "That's nice. Of course, some people think I'm an aardvark. Isn't that right, Rick?" I was baffled as to where that aardvark bit came from. I do remember on a shuttle bus from the airport going to a Rainbow Fest once, somebody telling me, "You know that Steve Bjork, right?" "Yeah." "Yeah, he's really an aardvark, isn't he?" I said, "Well, he may be an aardvark from time to time, but he's made some wonderful games for the color computer." And if Steve got wind of that, or everybody was always trying to get me, like mad at Steve, and I don't know why that was a big deal, but they seemed to really want that. So that's probably where that came from. So the only money I ever got from that project was the $1,000 for signing on. And Steve noted that and decided that he wanted that money. And he threatened to sue me if I didn't fork it over. And my response was, "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that." And happily, I never heard anything after that. After that, I took a break and did some OS 9 stuff for a while. This was back before Raspberry Pis made Unix affordable to the masses, and OS 9 was really the best game in town. Dale's TS Edit editor was very VI-like, but there were a lot, that was on purpose, because his favorite editor at the time was VI, believe it or not. So, and mine still is. I'm a dinosaur. But there were a lot of VI commands in it that TS-Edit didn't support, that I was in the habit of using, and that was annoying me. So I took a copy of the TS-Edit source code that Dale gave me, and I added them. So I distributed it as a patch file for legal reasons, although that was pretty much a joke. It's like, here, this is a patch file for TS-Edit, you know. Here, throw this out, put this in, you know. So legally it was kind of a joke, but, you know, well, it kept me out of jail, so that's okay. Eventually, I quit the scene altogether, but came back many years later. This is why I feel a certain humility. Some of you guys never left. My reemergence onto the scene started with Bomb Threat. Remember Bomb Threat? My kids called me up all excited one day. I didn't have any files related to Bomb Threat after several moves, but they suddenly remembered that we had an old videotape of gameplay. They rushed over to dig it out of storage, and then I had something to go on. I analyzed the heck out of that tape, got to work, and recreated the game from scratch, first using emulators and then later switching to an actual color computer. John Linville even produced cartridges of the game. My son Joel did the artwork for it. My son Joel's artwork is at my table, by the way, right now. My next big project was OmniStar, that game I started but never finished back in 1984, where you're hacking into a worldwide computer network. I couldn't find my design notes or any files for the game, so I programmed it again from scratch based on what I remembered of the basic concepts. When you start the game, you get this intimidating message. Oh, strictly enforced, security strictly enforced, improper use may result in penalties under Section 3.02 with risk of arrest and imprisonment. Section 3.02, huh? Therein lies a tale of one of the 2 times in my life when I was almost arrested. See this sign? There are signs like this outside children's playgrounds in San Francisco. I think the idea is to discourage any funny uncles that might want to hang out by the playground. And my family and grandchildren were at one of those playgrounds once, and they sent me back to the car to get an extra lawn chair. And so on the way back, a couple of cops stopped me. They thinking I might be a dangerous weirdo. And I had to do some fast talking to keep out of the hooskow. Now, down at the bottom there, it says Section 3.02 Park Code. I looked that up once. Section 3.02 says, obey all signs. And so this incident is commemorated in OmniStar. Now you know the rest of the story. I never did much with BASIC back in the day, so I decided for a change of pace I'd give that a try. But all of the overhead of line numbers and continuation characters and so forth drove me mad. So I programmed a BASIC preprocessor in Python that would convert basic code in this sort of BASIC 09-ish format into legit disk extended color BASIC source. It's called DECBPP, Disk Extended Basic Preprocessor. It assigns line numbers, tacks lines together, throws out comments, and so forth. It's really not a proper parser, so it's not all that clever. It doesn't handle nested ifs for one thing, but it keeps me sane. So DECBPP, and this pretty syntax highlighting, is included on Ron Klein's CoCoPie distribution, if the idea of working with the VI text editor doesn't give you hives. For example, I used it to preprocess the source for the kiosk program I use to allow people to play my games at conventions. And that's what's running on my CoCo 3 at my table today. You probably have questions about what you see listed here, so let's go through some of them. Temple of Rom 2 is the original game that's been enhanced a bit. I expanded the maze by 45% and added 2 new monsters. Skulls are nasty little aardvarks that come at you really fast. And then there are ghosts. They're sneaky. They're invisible until you get near them, and then, oops, watch out. You can get a bit of a jump scare. There's even a level builder utility on templeofrom.com, although it's a bit fussy. And pretty much a number of people have tried to build levels with it, and they have not succeeded. And I mentioned that to Grant Blodo because he mentioned the level builder, and he took that as a challenge. So when he gets home, he's going to try to build a level on it. And we'll see how far he gets. The 3 20-minute cassettes are one with the snows of yesteryear, as you might expect. But I started with a disassembly of the game that was done by Bill Astle. The Shanghai game listed on the menu plays a custom version of Shanghai with a few improvements. The original game had a secret color set that was accessed by clicking on a hard-to-find spot on the left of the screen. That color set was the original colors that we used during testing that Activision changed at the last second. I much preferred those colors, so I hid them as an Easter egg, but I hid them really good because I was afraid that Activision was going to find it. That secret color set is a secret no more. Activision's color set is listed as RGB1, and mine is RGB2. So with more memory to play with, the victory screen shows much more of the Victory Dragon display, but I still couldn't fit the entire thing. The rights to Temple of Rom reverted back to me after 2 years, but the legal rights to Shanghai are murky, so I'm limited in what I can legally do with it. So it's only on my GitHub for historical and educational purposes. But you may have noticed another Shanghai item on the menu, Shanghai 2. This is a version of Shanghai for 512K which has those same improvements plus a little bit more. This new loading screen here is what Activision originally wanted it to look like before we quickly abandoned that on early because of lack of memory. And the victory screen now shows the entire full-screen dragon in all its fire-breathing glory. This color chart is one that Dale and I cooked up for a rainbow article on the CoCo 3. The original assembler code had a glitch, however. It changed the palette registers in a way that was a bit sloppy, so there were white dashes down the left side of the screen. At the time, we didn't have a clue what that was about, so we just left it. Nowadays, that's less of a mystery, so recently I was able to consult with some people online and fix that. This is my roguelike game, Dragon Maze. Somebody did one of those online coding challenges to code a roguelike game in BASIC. So I came up with this in BASIC, but I never formally submitted it to the competition because I was too lazy to fill out the paperwork. It was fun to play with maze generation, though. I'd never done that before. Here is the maze it generates. It's random each time. You're O at the upper left, and then you hit the arrow keys to move around the maze, picking up gold and or swords with which you can slay dragons that are roaming around. And if you pick up all the gold before a dragon gets you, then you win. The AI for the dragons was fun to work out, and it's not all that great a game, but I had a lot of fun working on it. Next up is my Wordle clone for the CoCo 3. I had fun seeding the word list with Tandy-related words. This is written in BASIC, of course. Pretty much all of these games are on my GitHub, so you can play. Yeah.
Can I have you pause for 1 second?
Yeah.
Looking for a Harry Perkins. Is he in here by
Yeah.
chance? Is that you?
Yeah.
Oh, they need you to move your vehicle. I guess you're blocking in a semi-truck.
Oh.
Oh, that would be your vehicle, actually. Not mine.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's semi-truck.
Thank you.
Okay. Pretty much all of these games are on my GitHub.
Is this a real one or not?
So you can play with them too, or paw through the source code if you like. This Lights Out puzzle is an oldie but a goodie. If you Google for Lights Out puzzle, you'll learn some strategies for beating it. You use the joystick to click on various squares to toggle the lights in that general vicinity, and the goal is to get them all of the lights to go out. And you got to figure out the pattern for which ones go out, which ones go on when you click, and what's the deal with it. Again, written in BASIC, and it's on the GitHub. This one's kind of a curiosity. OmniStar 84. Now remember, I said I couldn't find the notes for OmniStar, so I had to code it from faint memories of the basic concepts. When I was moving out of my house of 26 years, I discovered a dusty cardboard box at the bottom of a stack of boxes at the far corner of my basement that had not moved since I'd moved there, 30 years earlier. Inside was a treasure trove of notes and listings from back in the day, including a listing of the source of an incomplete first attempt at coding this game, OmniStar, from 1984. There are also all the design notes. It was originally going to be a lot more convoluted than what I thought up many years later. One challenge was that some sections of the listings were garbled. The dot matrix printer I used was a bit wonky. So Grant Blodo and myself typed it in, and after a lot of debugging and some important detective work from Paul Fiscarelli, I now have a working program you can play around with. I hadn't remembered that I made my own font for the game that's an OCR micro font, just like you'd see at the bottom of checks. I'd say it was probably 10% done before I quit, and I can't remember why I did. There are interesting sound effects with each keystroke, too. They sound a bit like DTMF. It's not a playable game, and I have no plans to finish it. It's just a historical oddity, but you can play around with it on my CoCo 3 at my table if you like. Here's another program written in BASIC called Fox Hunt. It was inspired by ham radio fox hunts I've participated in, using direction finding equipment to search for a radio signal hidden somewhere in a city. You position the cursor on a square, hit return, and you'll get an indication of how close you are to a fox hidden randomly somewhere on the grid. How many guesses will it take you to zero in on your target? A fun part of developing this game was trying to figure out how to draw the fox using the smallest draw statement possible. This is something I whimsically call Temple of Rogue. It's sort of a roguelike game, very reminiscent of Temple of Rom in the way that the screen scrolls. And it's on the GitHub. And the only thing I've done since last year is I wrote a tic-tac-toe game in BASIC, and I had to make it stupider. I had to have it make a dumb move randomly about every 5 moves, so that you have a chance to beat it, because it's pretty much unbeatable if you don't do that. So that's also on the GitHub. Well, that about wraps it up. So there's my slide again, and let's open it up for questions or discussion. Ta-da! Yay!
Much fun this time as it was last year.
Oh, thank you.
By the way, thank you for doing it again this year. I missed last year.
Good.